Okay, so I'm not a morning person, so I appreciate you all being here with me, helping me wake up. So this morning I'm going to talk about mental health abroad, and I want to start by saying that I'm not an expert. My goal for this AFS talk is very much to just raise awareness, to start a dialogue. So I thought it was really fitting to put the equity and inclusion statement up, and I think it really fits with the theme of this NMEA about many faces of AFS and talking about disability. And also talking about invisible difference, which I think, if some of you attended ICL yesterday, we ended with a quote that I thought was really beautiful and sort of fit. It was talking about how we need to see difference, we need to respect it, embrace it, and use it. It's not something to be put to the side, it's something that we should bring to the table. So that's the goal of my AFS talk. I hope to inspire you to start thinking about the invisible difference that is mental illness and also other disabilities. Anything else I want to say about that? I bolded some pieces that I thought sort of fit, but you don't need to read the whole text, it's a lot. So, what are some facts about youth mental health? About 20% of 13 to 18-year-olds have a mental illness. That is about 1 in 5. And it's around the same facts for adults, so it's about 1.5 person per table in this room. And you don't always know. So just let that sink in for a second. And what's the impact of that? So, for study abroad, 16.8% of US college students with mental health disabilities have studied abroad by their senior year, which is pretty much on par for the 17.1% of their non-disabled peers. The facts for high school exchange are not very easy to find, so I thought college students, it's a similar population and a similar demographic. But the problem is that 50% of mental health illnesses are started around the age of 14, which is about the prime time that we send students. But it takes, on average, 8 to 10 years for anyone to seek help for any type of intervention. So even if we have perfect disclosure, even if everyone who had something to disclosed, there are people who are going to be out there who don't even realize exactly the severity or exactly the nature of what they're going through. So it's kind of impossible. So how do we work with that? How do we make it better? How do we encourage an environment that makes more people be willing to disclose? Because a lot of people don't. There's a great article in NASA's magazine, International Educator, from 2006, titled Mental Health and Study Abroad, that states too often participants choose not to report their conditions on required medical history forms, leaving program managers unaware of potential crisis situations. Even though the ADA, the American Disabilities Act, was put in place to protect students from this type of risk, many are reluctant to disclose. Because of the fear and the stigma around mental illness, and they believe that disclosing will preclude them from participation, which I feel, from my own anecdotal experience, my own lived experience, I think that that is a very real fear, and that is something that we can do better on making less fearful, making it more easy to disclose. In fact, on a presentation that I found from CIEE in their 2009 cohort, they found that over 50% of mental health crises that they had on program, over 50% were from students who had not disclosed pre-existing conditions. That is something we can work better on. That is not a hard reason to say no to every student who does disclose with a mental illness. That is a reason for us to make it easier to disclose. That is a reason for us to say, no, not at this time, or no, not this program. So, why do I care? So I studied abroad in Iceland in 2007. I was the first Speedwell Scholarship participant, for those of you who know Jenny Messner, the former board member. And when I left for Iceland in August of 2007, 9 months prior, my father had passed away. And 3 months later, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And I can't really recall the months leading up to my exchange very well because there was so much going on, but I know that I never erred in my desire to study abroad, and ultimately I'm very glad that I didn't, because I had an amazing experience. My host family that you can see on this slide, they were wonderful. We stay in touch. I've gone back to visit them 3 times since. But in the years past my exchange, I've thought about the decision I made a lot, and I thought about the risk that was inherent in the decision that I made, and that I had a successful trip, but not everyone in my experience might have. I have depression and anxiety as well, and those were not caused from those traumatic incidences, but they were definitely impacted by them. So that's why I'm here, because I want us to do better. I don't want a student who may not have the support networks that I had to go abroad and feel the feelings that they're dealing with alone. So that's when I went back in October. My family. They're amazing. They texted me this morning and were like, good luck. They're so sweet. So how can we do better? Because many students with mental illness will go on to succeed and flourish, and if they don't disclose, we don't know that they're successful, because we don't even know that there was any risk there to begin with. I think this quote from Mayusa, Mobility International USA, sums it up really well. For every student with a mental health related disability who experiences a crisis abroad, many more will succeed. We can't assume that cultural adjustments will have a negative effect, because many students go on to realize that the coping mechanisms they've developed are universal and that they apply to any situation. And what do our partners say? These are also very text-heavy slides. Please do not attempt to read them all. So CIEE states that disabled students study abroad successfully all the time. Greenheart has a much stricter policy. And I want to point out that in the bottom it says, if a student's mental health issue has been resolved post-medication for over 2 years, which subtly implies that medication is the only way to resolve these type of illnesses, which is simply not the fact. There are many paths to wellness and well-being for everyone, and it very much varies case by case. But so I want you to think, if you were a student, a young student, who's maybe experiencing something stressful for the first time, not really sure what's going on, which one would make you feel more likely to disclose? Which one would you feel better about going forward with? And I think it's important to understand the way, the environment that we create around these issues, very much just, we want to help students. Their well-being is our #1 priority. We don't want to make them feel shamed or reluctant to come forward with information that is necessary and vital to their well-being on program. The only thing that I found on AFS-USA's website was on the Japan program page, because they do have such strict regulations that it was very much like, hey, just a caution, probably won't accept you if you have severe allergies to mental illness, to, some dietary restrictions. So I think we can do better there. And some other ideas that I have, which are idealistic, but I think that's where we need to start, is just a webpage for participants who have disabilities at all, not just invisible disabilities, but any type of disabilities, who may have questions about what kind of accommodations can I have on exchange. Diversify insurance options, work with our insurance options providers to maybe cover pre-existing conditions to see if we could get supplemental insurance for students who might need it. Consider making disclosure a part of the post-admission process, so that students are already applied, they've already been accepted, they then disclose, and then we work with them to find programs at the right time and for the right duration in the right countries that will be accepting of their conditions or that will be accommodating. That is very idealistic, I understand, but I want to put it out there. Compare best practices with other peer organizations. How do they handle these types of situations? What are their best practices? How can we all do better? Because working together, sharing this information is going to help all of our programs succeed, even if we are competing for students. And also resources for students who are studying abroad. What's the cultural perspective on mental illness in their country? How is it perceived? Because it varies so much, because it is a way we think of something societally, because we think of it as a difference from the normal. And normal changes, as we all know when we studied abroad. The idea of what's acceptable, what's polite, what's funny is very cultural. And the same is true with mental illness. Also, resources for discussing mental health with your host community. How do you talk to someone about that? What is a good way of planning it? Maybe you don't even have to use the word depression. Maybe you don't even have to use the words bipolar disorder if that is something that you think is too risky. Maybe you say, sometimes when I get stressed, I get a little tired and I need an extra moment to myself. That's all you have to say sometimes. Also, if there's anything I missed, is there anything I missed? I think that's it in terms of how I think, some general ideas about moving forward, but I would love to talk more about these, any other ideas, because I am not the only source of information here. I know we have people in this room who either know people or themselves struggle with these things and have gone abroad and done it successfully and are excited about it, or else they wouldn't be here. So I look forward to talking to you about that, and I think we can do it. I really do. I mean, I had a wonderful experience. I had a great support network. I know that it's possible. I think this quote is great. The success of study abroad, especially for students with mental health, is predicated on a preemptive, transparent, and supportive environment, which requires an effort from everyone involved. So today I'm asking all of you to start thinking about this more seriously, to be aware of the language you use when you're talking to sending students and students who are inbound, to just be sensitive to the fact, to look out for warning signs, to be welcoming, to be empathetic, to be understanding. So those are some resources. Mobility International USA, which I mentioned previously, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is where I got most of the statistics, which they took from the National Institute for Mental Health, which is a government-funded research program. So those are pretty reliable statistics, I feel. University of Southern Florida has a really great mental health wellness abroad, that should say abroad, I apologize, packet, which has tons of resources and suggestions. Yes, it is a university program, so they have slightly different resources, but I think it's still very robust. NPR, Studying Abroad with Mental Illness, TED Ideas, How Should We Talk About Mental Health, are all useful just in case you want to keep exploring this idea on your own. So thank you.